Mr. Ramaphosa came. He saw, and he went. South Africa's visit to the United States this week coincided shortly after my return back to the U.S. So what has changed? 26,000 people are still murdered every year. 18,000 or more kidnappings happening. Farmers are still forced to walk around carrying sidearms every waking moment of their lives. One of my meet and greets on the west coast in South Africa had a family, young family, come with their small children, their daughters, both of them packing firearms because of the safety question about how they could be killed at home on their farm. This is not normal. This is not how life is meant to be lived. This is how people lived in Rhodesia in the 1960s and 1970s, fearing for their life as people come and murder them on their farms at night. And it's not about farmers. It's not about farmers. It's not about whites. No, folks. This is about racial discrimination and the imposition of laws that are just as morally bankrupt as what the National Party did during the apartheid era. Why is the world still sleeping? Where are the world leaders in the Western countries in Europe speaking up after seeing the debacle that occurred in the White House? They're not stupid enough to believe the U.S. and South African press talking about an ambush. There was no ambush. There was no ambush. It was Ramaphosa who rudely interrupted Donald Trump when asked a setup question to embarrass Trump. Ramaphosa did Trump a big favor and then dug himself a grave. The South African reporter asked the question to embarrass Trump. And Ramaphosa says, no, I'll answer this question. I'll take it. And Trump's like, okay, go ahead. Dig your own grave. Hands in the shovel or spade. Ramaphosa starts digging and digging. What did he do? He did exactly the one thing I gave advice to the ANC not to do in the Government of the National Union. They don't listen. They don't listen, thick as a box of rocks. I said, do not lecture Donald Trump. Do not lecture him. And not only did they lecture him, they did it in public. You see, things will get better when President Trump listens. He must listen to South Africans. We have brought people with us, South Africans, for him to listen to. Billionaires, sports icons, whiteys. That's who we brought. That's who we brought. He must listen. When he listens, then things will improve. And then this embarrassing nonsense. We have a crime problem. Really? You acknowledge it finally. You have a crime problem. You have a crime problem. Yeah, you have a crime problem, and it starts in government. That's where it starts, with kleptocrats and thieves. That's where the problem starts. A crime problem. We need your help. We need technology. Really? Then why did Johan Rupert tell the truth about how Zuma blocked U.S. drones from being shipped to South Africa to help you with your crime problem? And why must we give our equity to someone based on skin pigmentation? Why must we give away our companies that we worked hard for to build, to raise revenue, to grow, to create jobs, to improve our economy? Why must we give that to someone in South Africa because they were born Zulu or Xhosa or Venda? What kind of horse manure is that? The needle wasn't moved. The needle wasn't moved. If anything, South Africa made it worse, far worse. For those not paying attention, watch the video again. Read Donald Trump's body language. He was not impressed by any of this, not even remotely impressed. In fact, they simply made him very angry with their conduct and their actions. It's sad to see. So here we are. The murders continue. Gender-based violence continues. The suffering of black, brown, and white South Africans continues. While the people who lead South Africa act as if this is only a myth, that there is no genocide. Well, no one's talking about a genocide except you clowns and the media. Trump was asked specifically about genocide question. He says, I'm not convinced. That was his response. Yet every media outlet says Trump is lambasting Ramaphosa for white genocide. Trump never said white genocide. And yes, I know he said a Truth Social post some time ago about that, but that wasn't the meeting. At the meeting, he said he wasn't convinced. That should have been the headline. Only one South African media outlet actually reported that. The rest are lying, saying Trump was talking about a white genocide. He wasn't. You're distracting. You're distracting. You're lying. Your corrupt, inept government is the problem. That's the problem. You have incompetent people throughout the bureaucracy because you used racism to replace the bureaucracy instead of competency and merit. Instead of investing in education and raising the educational level of all South Africans, you've dumbed it down to the lowest standards possible. How are you not embarrassed that you allow people to matriculate, to graduate with 30%, in one subject, 30% in the second subject, 30% in the third subject, and 40% in your first language. And instead of being honest about this deception, you lie. Oh no, it's not true. Of course it's true. It's published educational standards for the entire world to see, and you're not embarrassed by this. Think for just a moment. Your excuse when I say this is, well, not all those people get in university. But that's not true. We know of white Afrikaans-speaking students who get 98% on the matric and can't get into UCT because he's white. Yet students with 45 and 50% pass rates get in because they're black. This is racism. You didn't help the black student. You didn't help the white student. You hurt everybody. You hurt everybody with your bigotry and racism. If you want to fix historical wrongs, then you should have created a National Sovereign Wealth Fund. You should have created a functioning community police force that protects the community and helps people instead of preying on people or being inept. You should have invested in education. And not by pushing people out of education, but by raising education standards and levels. That's what you should have done. But instead, you've got a mess of your own making, 31 years, and you blame Jan van Riebeck. You blame Hendrik Verwoerd. No doubt, the history plays a role here. But the reality is this: you have cocked this up. Not America. We're not the ones who had the Lady R doctor. We're not the ones who trained Chinese fighter pilots at South African training academies. We're not the ones who denied an Article 98 waiver. We are not the ones who put a 75% poultry tariff on our imports. You did that. You're responsible for it. You must correct the situation. Simple as that. So I've been home for a week in the United States. And what has changed in South Africa? A delegation of South Africans came to the United States and tried to snow the American public and the world. Now, they're talking about an ambush, but bear in mind that Cyril Ramaphosa was spared the personal embarrassment of videos of him telling Donald Trump that he can keep us America, we'll keep our South Africa, or that we won't be bullied in Parliament, or running around screaming vaccine apartheid, or the video of Cyril Ramaphosa after lying and saying he opposes what Julius Malema said, kill the Boer, after lying to Trump right there in the Oval Office. A video posted right there moments later saying, we welcome Julius back to the ANC. That's his natural home.
We would love to have Julius Malema back in the ANC. He is still ANC down deep in his heart. So we would like to have those who are in the EFF back in the ANC, because the ANC is their home.
Because that's his actions, that's his words, as he sat there and lied in front of international cameras. This isn't AI, this isn't doctored, this isn't altered, this isn't posted by Twatterboss. These are his own words. This is the man who sat in front of Bloomberg Television in 2018 at the United Nations and said, there are no farm murders in South Africa. There are no farmers being murdered in South Africa. There are no white farmers being murdered in South Africa. That's a lie. It's always been a lie. And for the media to sit there and play this fact-checking, well, Donald Trump got it wrong, those aren't burial sites. No, they're not burial sites, dingbat doorknob. We know they're not burial sites. We know that that was a protest. And it wasn't a multiracial protest. It was a protest against farm murders in the aftermath of a couple being murdered and Brendan Horner's murder. They'd had enough. Each cross represented a murdered white South African farmer or their family member.
And those cars aren't driving. They're stopped there to pay respects to their family member who's killed. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it. Both sides of the road, you have crosses. Those people were all killed.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? No, I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen. Okay.
I mean, it's in South Africa.
That's the point. So you want to parse this? Oh, well, it wasn't the burial site. Donald Trump got, it's not a genocide. Oh. Are you serious? Are you serious? People like you should be horsewhipped, should be taken out in public and embarrassed for your stupidity. You're not journalists. You're frauds. You're total frauds. Why don't you report the facts, the truth? Well, white farmers are not suffering as badly. Oh, shut up. Shut up. It isn't about white farmers. It's about racial discrimination and a system of corruption built upon that edifice. That's what it's about. The needle was not moved. It was made worse. Shame, 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 shame. And John Steenhuisen, this is why we joined the government of national unity, to keep these radicals out. Really? So you've kept the radicals out. What have you accomplished? Let's see, the Basic Education Laws Amendment, which abrogates the rights of local school boards and forces everyone to learn in English, a language spoken by just 6% of South Africans as their first language. Now you want 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds to go to school who don't speak a word of English, being forced to learn English, falling behind their peers around the world and in Africa. Stupid. Bella, in place with the DA as part of the GNU. The 3% black tax, a corporate scandal. Going to take 3% of corporate profits and put it into a slush fund for black businesses. Really? Really? Okay, well, there you go. You're stealing from corporations to enrich their competitors. That isn't capitalism. That isn't free market democracy. That is graft. And then, of course, expropriation without compensation and national health insurance initiative is coming down the pipe. What exactly did you join the government of national unity for to keep the radicals out when all the radicals are getting their policies implemented while you're part of this government? Nah, I'm sorry. Enough of that. What say you, South Africa? What say you, world? Do you see through this BS or are you falling for it? Cheers.